call the meeting to order for our latest update on where we stand on our budget. I find it interesting that we have 12 million unencumbered. I understand that's probably because of all the salaries and positions that have not been filled. I do have some concerns that with all the negative balances I saw, but I'm expecting to be relieved and told that they're being paid for grants, or I'm sure there's another reasonable explanation. I would like to turn the meeting over to John Spang. Kevin, I don't see you in there. If you are, please. Okay, because I sometimes usually like to give an opening statement. You are not on my screen. John, would you like to take it away, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Al. And I'm going to have Ken Wallace here put the report up in a second. Here goes. But before we start on the first page, what I'd like to do something just a little different this month because it's so late in the month. You know, we've been canceled because of different things. So what I did was I ran some reports also through today, you know, and shows the 3 weeks that have since we ran the report the first time, because it's a very busy time for us. A lot's going on, and the numbers the balance starts to go down pretty quickly this time of year. So I thought it'd be good to see both. But if you go back to the opening page, I'm just seeing someone's calendar here.
As am I.
Are you there, Ken?
We're viewing Kenneth Wallace's screen, which is
Yeah.
the culprit.
Do we still have Ken? Oh, there he is. Okay. Well, yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah, we'll start with that one. I thought too, the narrative's a little longer this month, maybe because you have a different writer. I wrote it. It wasn't Eddie this time. And you can see there, I start by saying through February, 91.2% of the budget had been expended or encumbered. And doing the math, that would have left what, 8.8% unencumbered, undesignated, unobligated, if you will. And in the last 3 weeks, that number has dropped. And when I ran the report today, and you could even compare it to what's in the box, our expenditures have gone from, in 3 weeks, from 66 million up to 82.4 million, just to give you an idea of what a busy month it is. Many of those are encumbered, so the encumbrances dropped, have gone down to about 48 million, and the unencumbered balance today is 9,905,000. And operationally, what's very much challenging us and makes it difficult to predict June 30th is what's going on at the high school. And what I mean is we're using a lot more substitutes than we had before. Some of it's we're using teachers more for overloads. If you remember, an overload is a teacher, if they're regularly scheduled for 6 classes, we can force a 7th class if a teacher's out on a vacancy or a leave or something like that. So we have we're spending over $400,000 on teachers who are there just to cover vacancies and cover the enrollment increase that we've had. You heard a lot about that when we presented the budget. Not only is there higher enrollment there, but there are more graduation requirements for kids to graduate. And so with all that, the day-to-day scheduling is very difficult for Dan and his staff. The administration's complex. And what I say there in my paragraph is, um, that's the story of the budget that's going in front of the mayor and the city council. As we've said, we need more staff at the high school for all these reasons. And I think what I'm trying to say is the enrollment increase is there now. It's been there. We have struggled to keep up with it. We're hoping the budget would get us higher, but it just makes for hard to predict day to day what's going to happen in terms of substitutes. So I want to point that out. Financially, that's the most difficult thing we're dealing with as we go through the year, and it shows up in the line items. The other thing that's important, I think, during February was that the governor unveiled his budget for next year. So, as everybody knows, the way it works, the governor proposes a budget, and then the General Assembly takes it up, the House and the Senate. And they will, and they're in the process now, they'll probably come up with their own version of the budget that may be similar to the governor's. It may be different on certain things. You've probably read about some of the hearings they're having, and they might add to it, they might take away from it. And they may even come up with two different budgets, one for the House and one for the Senate. So there have been years we've had three budgets floating around, and then they bring them all together as the session goes on. And I forget what they call that, but a budget will go back to the governor to sign or veto or reject or whatever. But that's the process that's going on now, and we read about it every day. The governor's budget, though, the way it impacts Danbury is for a couple years now, we've been promised an increase in the Alliance grant. The Alliance grant is our biggest grant. It's $21 million, and or it's going to 21, up from 19. You'll see it on the page here. But that's the state's answer to trying to equalize some of the funding disparities that are from town to town and community to community. Some communities can just they can tax more than others, and this grant is very important. There are 15 or 20 districts that get it, and they've promised alliance districts. That's what we call folks like us that get it. That we would get an increase of a couple $1 million a year for the next 2 or 3 years. And the governor's budget does that. It sticks with that promise. The 19 million we have this year will go up to 21 million next year. And I don't hear anyone talking about changing that. What we would, though, is a little over $1.5 million of that, or almost $1.5 million. We'll need that just for the staff that are in benefits, that are people that are in that grant now. And our predictions are that we'll have about $500,000 in new money, so to speak, if the budget goes, governor's budget goes through. A lot of what mostly what's in that right now are kindergarten teachers. We use that grant to go from when it first came out, from having half-day kindergarten to full-day kindergarten. And so instead of having one teacher teach 2 classes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, you needed 2 teachers because it was obviously all day. But this is how we paid for it. So if you were to look into that grant, Today, you'd see probably about 40 kindergarten teachers. And so the increase will mostly go to their labor contract increases, but there'll still be a little left. And that money, the Alliance money, comes straight to us, the school district, and you see we manage it like one of our grants. The other thing that will benefit Danbury generally is a shift in all these things seem to have the same initials. Our state aid for education, also known as ECS, or educational cost sharing. There was some talk that started last year that said some districts are underfunded with this formula, some districts are overfunded, and there was a lot of talk of redistributing that pie of educational cost sharing aid. And the governor's budget starts down that path. You look at it, there's some winners and losers of educational cost sharing. We stand to gain from his budget. Our state aid would go up $900,000. Now, my own prediction is that's going to be hard to sustain because some of the places that are losing money are some of Connecticut's poorest districts in Eastern Connecticut. So it doesn't seem like the formula is working, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about that. But the educational cost sharing and all of the state aid goes into the city coffers. Even though it's for education, there are other state aids that come for other purposes. There's aid to pave roads. There's aid for police act grants and other things like that. But those are all used by the city to offset the tax rate when it comes time to figure out the tax bills. So yes, it's earmarked education. Yes, it's coming to Danbury, but it doesn't necessarily affect our budget and what we get specifically. But it's still, I think, in everyone's best interest to lobby and support that. The more money the city gets, the better off we all are. So that's in there. I want to point that out. That would be an increase of 900,000 into the town revenue chest. So that was important in February. This month, probably the most important thing I believe coming up, I probably next week we'll see the mayor's recommended budget for the entire city. So just to repeat, the city charter requires that the mayor deliver a citywide budget. I think it's the first April meeting of the city council. So it might be April 4th, I'm not sure. But last year and the year before, the Board of Education's recommended budget was reduced in the mayor's recommended budget. In fact, recall last year, it was $11 million was reduced from what we had adopted. The city council in their ad hoc committee, the budget committee, looks at the mayor's recommendation. It's kind of hard to do because if it's lower, we haven't decided what we're going to do differently, but they take up the budget. I think it's the second week in April. The date should have come around because the city council has to come up with a budget the first week of May, their first meeting in May. So it'll all happen fast. I've always thought that the mayor's recommendation was more important than what the ad hoc committee did with that recommendation. So that will be hearing very soon what's in store for us. Okay, so the report itself Ken, do you want to go to the next page? That's the summary we've seen before. It just, if you could go down, yeah, right there. No, the second page, Ken, with the grid with the lines. Yep, that's it. Yeah, doing that myself, it probably looks a little different than the way Eddie did it. I wasn't sure. You know, we pull this all up from our database and stored in Excel, and I don't think he was showing the lines like I did. But there the numbers through February. And again, what I said when I ran the report today, the numbers are different. I won't repeat those. Ken, can you go to the next page? Yeah, these are the line items, and let me get
John,
to
we're not
Al's.
seeing the presentation right now.
Oh, okay,
Oh, Kevin. Okay.
okay. Boy, I'm seeing it. Are you seeing it, Al?
I am seeing assistant principal.
I'm seeing it as well.
I'm
Yep.
seeing it.
Can you see it, Kevin?
I can see it now.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so let me address Al's question a little bit. And so we've talked to you for the last few months about vacancies that we had, unfilled positions. You heard me describe how we're responding to that at the high school with overloads and the substitutes. And where you see that money appearing is on the line that's, I think it's the sixth line down that says counseling, and 3 or 4, there's $1.4 million unencumbered there. In special ed, regular ed teaching, $1.7 million. I don't expect those numbers to change much between now and June. Our teaching staff is in place. It's helpful for us to, in a year like this, when you expect to see balances, to also see what's going on with the minuses. Some of those are because we budgeted differently. It helps us know where to budget more correctly or more accurately the next year. And if you start to add, if you were to add them up, all of our salary lines, then back on the first page is where they're summarized. There, I think we're saying $1.6 million is unencumbered right now towards the end of the year. And again, those are from vacancies. So that's Al, when you pointed out the unencumbered balance, that's one of 2 places where it mostly comes from. But the second place, as you go down the page, towards the bottom, you'll see our health insurance, about, I don't know, 7 or 8 lines up from the bottom. And if you remember, we're self-insured, which means we pay the actual claims that are incurred. And the way it works is Cigna is the district's third-party administrator. People go to the doctor, they fill out a claim on a Cigna form, goes into Cigna, or their doctor does, and Cigna administers our benefits and all that. But the claims that Cigna's paying the doctors, the hospitals, employee reimbursements, we're paying those dollar for dollar. Every Monday, Cigna has a direct pull from our bank account of whatever the claims were from the following periods. And those can be anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 a week. So it won't take long for that 6.5 million to go down. This is probably, though, one of the hardest lines to predict. You remember last year, we just couldn't get a handle on it. It's just hard to predict some of these very high cost things that happen, or how often people are going for care. And normally it wouldn't be that as difficult as it is now, but we're still seeing ups and downs from COVID and the pandemic in terms of people's care. Although people are back going to their doctors, going to the hospitals like they did, some of the effects of the pandemic, where people were, including ourselves, were uh, stayed in our houses for a long time. We didn't get some of the preventive care we might have, some of the other things that would have helped us. That's starting to boomerang. And as you talk to the insurance in the hospitals, some of the things they're seeing are things that maybe could have been prevented if we had more normal circumstances. So it's that what's going on there makes it hard to predict. So when you look at those two lines, um, that's where the balance is coming from, which we now said was down to about 9 million dollars. So um, what I'll do, why don't I just go through the grants a little bit, and then we can discuss any and all. Does that sound okay, Al, or do you want to stop at
Well,
this point? Or
yeah, long as we're on this page,
okay,
I'm seeing several deficits,
yes,
and a lot of them stand out to me. And I'm sure you have a reasonable answer, but
yep.
I'm seeing that we are $900,000 short in our custodial account, and am I reading that correctly?
Yes, I know. Well, I don't know if I'd say we're short there. We have been under under budgeted for sure. I didn't think it was that. Don't believe we've missed by that much. So
I
I'd
show
like to take a
903,852.
yeah. I'd like to take a closer look at that one and maybe report back what's going on. I
But
just don't know. It sounds like something's miscoded, but
okay,
let me
I'm
find out.
sure it is. But starting with assistant principal, $110,000 over encumbered, and a principal of 257 thousand over encumbered.
Yep.
Supervisor directors 309,000. Though those numbers are concerning to me, and I'm sure there's an answer. And I know in order to
Mhm.
have reasonable minutes for tomorrow night's meeting,
Okay.
is
So
it
yep, if we go back, um, if Ken, if you could just go back a page. And I know this isn't the best answer. If you look up at the 100 lines of salaries, when you put that all together, Al, there's $1,600,000 that's unencumbered. So it tells me the lines we may have budgeted in are not the lines people are coded in. But overall, it doesn't give me cause to worry from looking at the individual ones.
so these are coding questions, perhaps? That I
Well,
was I was hoping they were possibly something you were going to pay for with grants or, uh, but yeah, okay.
yeah.
I'm sure you'll get an answer for us. I
Well,
just,
I
before we move
I
on,
can
I'm just,
say,
go
yeah, I
ahead.
would say this much, Al, the budget we put together for salaries that you're looking at, these individual lines, that was what I'd call our table of organization. It was the people who were working here in December, early December of 2021. 2021. So that was a good 15 months ago. We have to budget 18 months ahead of time, and we're, lots changed. We've had we have had a lot of turnover. You've heard about that, but it was a long time ago we put the people into the budget. So and we've had some labor contracts since that have settled. It could be I'm thinking it's a number of different factors rather than just one, but I'd like to report back when I take a closer look.
please. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Let me, if I could, oh. Teresa's
Teresa?
hand.
Any word about the auditors?
Oh, yes. Okay, so where do I start? I think I believe I told you, described last month that the city had not hired auditors for the year that ended June of 2022, right? Did I report that? I think I did.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. And so what was happening was, when the auditors are hired, they're hired to do several things in their contract. The main thing in most of their work, the lion's share, is to produce the city's annual report, their annual financial statements. Sometimes that's called a CAFR. That's abbreviation, Consolidated Annual Financial Report. If you looked on the city's website in the finance department, I think there's a link to annual reports, and you would find that it's a book. It's looks to be 300 pages. The city puts it together, and then the auditors come in and check it, and it's all the different funds, the revenues, the taxes, all of that. That's one of the three things they do. In order to do that, they test check and they sample, and they might come up with recommendations for procedures and controls, but that's all still one part of that. Usually, the auditors would come in April and May, do all their sampling, testing, and once they're satisfied that the systems are working, that the numbers that they're looking at are reliable, they leave. They come back in November. The year closes in June. They come back in November, but by then the city finance department has put their reports together, and they check them all out, and they have to have their work done by the end of December. The city part one. Part two is they audit a report that all boards of education have to do by the end of August. It's called the EFS, another E acronym. But what the state education department wants to know is, how much did we spend on what, and from all sources. So they want to know, how much did we spend from our budget, plus how much did we spend from grants, plus how much was spent by the city on our behalf. We add those all up and report them in. Things a city might do for you. They plow our driveways in the winter time, or we have SRO officers in our middle schools, and there's other things. Every town and city might do it a little differently. Maybe next door they're plowing their own parking lots. So they put all of the schools on an equal pairing, and then that goes into Hartford. So the auditors come in and check that out too. They say, they have a checklist of, I don't know, a couple hundred questions to answer. Like, did you test check transportation on line 5, and did you sample teacher contracts on line 56 and stuff like that. That's the EFS report. And that's also due at the end of December. And then the third thing is called, for whatever reason, a single audit. And what that is they compile both from the city and the school a list of every grant that they got and how much was it. It doesn't tell you anything else. The city gets an awful lot of grants too. So do we, and they separate it in a book with the state grants, monies that originate at the state level, like Alliance, and then the federal grants are things you've heard, Title I, IDA, things like that. So it's those three tasks that are part of their contract. Well, in early December, the auditor wrote to us and said, we haven't been hired yet for the year that ended June. Just want you to know. Well, the state ed department, which gets our report, that middle report, was expecting it in December. They didn't get it. They asked us why. We said, well, you know, the auditors aren't working yet. And one thing led to another. They asked us, and we talked about having our own, hiring our own auditors to do that work. So the middle one. So I checked with Dan Garrick, the city finance director. He talked with the auditor's partner, Scott Bassett. They both thought it was a good idea. It kind of surprised me, but they did. So we hired a CPA who had done school audits, or done city audits across Connecticut, including the school piece. And he finished the work, I think maybe 2 weeks ago now. We sent it up to Hartford to the state ed department. They acknowledged getting it. They thanked us. They also asked for a letter explaining why it was late. Got the letter from the superintendent, and he answered, well, you know, our auditors didn't work. So we haven't seen them either for the year that ended June of 22. We haven't heard anything from them. What normally happens to start is they send you a list that says, here are the things we want you to get ready and either scan to us or send, or we'll come look at it. Things like bank reconciliations, salary agreements, all kinds of stuff. We haven't heard a word for 21, 22. So at least the state has what they needed to get from us. I know it's a long story, long-winded explanation, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Grants a little bit. Couple things going on there. Ken, do you want to go to the first grant page? It's the last page in our report. And I'm sorry this is so small. Again, I was doing it this month, and I was trying to get things into the way you were used to seeing them, but it went all on one page and got too small. So I'll do better next time. There's two grants in particular I'd like to point out, because we're going to hear a lot about them as we go through the budget. The first one is about a third of the way down. It's called ESSER 3, number 37. All the grants, as you can see, are numbered at the end. Yep, right there. That was originally a $35 million grant. When we started the year, we had 2 years remaining. We had spent about 13 million, and I'm sorry, $25 million grant. I take that back. We had only spent a few million, but you can see we've been using it. Remember when we had to cut the budget in June, you know, we had an $11 million cut from the city. Most of that cut was transferred, and instead of cutting jobs and services and all that, we had this grant that was pretty large, so we moved our plans into the grant. Now you can see there that as we come to the end of the second year, it's a 3-year grant, there's $12 million there was unencumbered as to February 28th. When I looked at it today, that number is down to 11.6 million. And our predictions are, and as we look at how we're going to manage ourselves next year, we're predicting that figure on June 30th or July 1 will be $11 million. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure, as we begin to get into budget deliberations with the city and all. But that grant is very important to us to watch and see what happens there. That will be the only COVID grant left when we start in July. Remember, the first one was called the CARES Act. It's about $2 million. The second one, if you look up the page, is grant number 29. That's they call it ESSER 2. And
Like, this month, we don't have the grant numbers on your sheet. Just,
it should be right on the screen there. You see, it's at
I've
the
got
end of the letter.
project, I don't have the number that usually attached to it.
It's right there after the description. See it 029?
Oh, all right, I stand corrected. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We had a way of resorting these. I didn't know how they were doing it, so I put it up this way. So there you see 3.8 million unencumbered. And this grant ends on, actually it's September 30th, but school ends in June. So for all intents and purposes, it ends this school year. And what we've done this month is we asked the state to amend our application. It's the first time we've asked the state to consider a new plan for any of our COVID pandemic grants, any of the three. This was the first time. And what we've asked them to do is approve our K-5 reading program, which you've heard about a couple times, I think at your meetings, the need for a new reading program. And that cost will be a little more than $3.8 million. If the state approves it, and we have every reason to think they will, it's an allowable expense, or eligible expense, I should say. We will then encumber this for the reading program. And that will bring an end to the second of the three ESSER grants. So we're watching this one carefully. But I wanted to point out, as you look at all the grants, those are the two that are the most important to us. Those are the part of that financial cliff you hear about, and some of the other presentations we've made. So we'll be in our meetings the next couple months. We'll be looking carefully at these for sure. Yeah. I think Teresa has a question.
Is that reading program a recurring cost?
There will be, like any any program with textbooks, there's, you have to replace textbooks, as every so often they wear out, or enrollment changes.
I mean, like a subscription cost? Is there a subscription on top of the books?
Well, I'm gonna look to Kara Casimiro maybe to answer that. All of these, everything today has some online parts to it that teachers use. There's some online training. There's a digital part of this, I'll say that much. And I know there's a recurring part, but it's nothing like 3.8 million. This is really for all 5 grades to get a new curriculum and a new program. So, okay, so those are the grants. We talked about the budget. I know I did a little differently this month, but there's a lot going on. And that's what I had out.
Okay. All right, sir. That is Teresa. Go ahead.
When are you getting your new assistant?
So, yeah, we've been advertising for a couple weeks. Eddie is now in his new job in Middletown. And we just, yesterday, we had 13 applicants. There was a 14th came in today. It really didn't have the background. We've done a paper screen, and there'll be either 5 or 6 people. We're going to invite in for interviews. There'll be a panel of people to interview them and score them. There are no internal candidates that applied. They're all external. What I took an extra week because I advertised it in the New York school business officials webpage, thinking there might be some Westchester people or Putnam County people, and we didn't get much from that. So we're either going to do the first round of interviews on the 28th, I think that's next Tuesday, or the 31st, next Friday, depending when the panel can get together. And then depending, if there are 2 candidates who bubble up, maybe another round. If there's one, probably bring them in or her in to be interviewed by some of the other administrators here. And then hopefully, and then, they're all working somewhere, so they would probably have to give notice, of a couple weeks. So best case, I think, would be the middle of April, 3rd week in April. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions?
Mr. Russo, there were a couple of questions in the chat. Or actually,
Sorry,
one question in the
sorry.
chat.
Let me look at those first. All right, Teresa, do you want to go first? Or you want me to do the chat?
No, go do the chat.
Okay. What is the percentage drop on unencumbered from 8.8% today? Well, maybe I could answer it this way. Our expenditures went up $18 million. Our budget's 141 million. Not much goes on in July and August, so it's pretty much a 10-month event. With most of our expenditures coming in June, when we have our teacher, we call it a balloon payroll. They can take less money during the year and more at the end, so they have some money for the summer. So the percentage drop from 12 million to 10 million, probably 18%, I would think. And it looks normal to me for March. It's just a lot happening. Okay, next question. The CABE webinar, the Reading State Grant is only 20 million for all participating districts. Where the Reading State Grant, I'm not familiar. There's about a state grant just for reading.
Yeah, there is.
If there is, that could be a budget offset. I think we'll take a look at that because right now we're paying for it with the ESSER grant. And if we could use this grant, that would free the ESSER money up for something else. So that's, I think we'll look at that first thing in the morning. Thank you. Of course, remember the budget is not yet final. As I started out with, the General Assembly might change some of it. So before we jump, let's make sure it's in the law. Oh, the Right to Read Act. Okay, that's good to know. What else is here?
John,
Yeah.
can I ask a quick question? Maybe you're not the person to answer it, but I think Dr. Casimiro brought up the cost for the implementation of that reading program as somewhere in the
Yes.
neighborhood, if I want to say, between $3 and $4 million. And
Right.
it was going to be done in segments. Is that right?
Well, so what we're seeing now is something just under, right around 4 million. There's only 3.8 million left in the ESSER 2. And our plans are to look at the unencumbered balances in June and hopefully earmark some of that for the rest of the reading program. I have to say, there's going to be some competing interests for end of year money. Uh, For example, our budget for next year has a portion for savings and efficiencies. Those are things we might want to do this year instead of next year. There's also a brand new security grant around that requires a local share. The state would pay 2/3, which is a lot of money. If we could pay 1/3, so some things like that. I'd love to be able to do all of those if we can. So that's thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for the chat box. Okay. And then Teresa, did you have a question? Yeah.
Yes. The trip to Tennessee, I understand was paid for grants. Which one paid for that trip? Because I'm hoping we have more
Yeah.
money so we could go down.
Yeah, it's called the BAR grant. It very Tara does it more better than I would. They're very much encouraging our academy model. They're giving us a lot of leeway. If you look on there, it's at the bottom of the grant page. There are two of them.
Right.
Grant number 139 and 145. That looks like there's a lot of money left, but I don't know what her plans are for that. Knowing her, she's got a plan. So
Well, I'm hoping that we will get invited to go to Tennessee and see for ourselves.
yeah, I think Kevin's still on. I mean, the stories we're hearing from that are just remarkable. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
sounds
right.
great. Okay. Other?
Anyone else? Anyway,
Oh, chat.
Ms. Cooper,
Good evening, John and everyone. I had to go out for a few minutes. My concern is we have everything all lined up from what I see. My question would be to you, since the city has not completed their audit.
Yep.
Is any of this, how is this affecting our budget as far as finances coming out that's being
Well,
probably
yeah.
held over to the Board of Ed?
So it's a good question. We talked a little bit. I mentioned a little bit about the audit. Now, most times, like an ad hoc committee or cities and towns that have finance boards instead, the folks that are setting the tax rate,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are usually pushing the hardest to have a completed audit. Because what they're interested in is the surplus money, the community chest, the retained earning. How much is there? For many different reasons, they don't want to overtax if they don't have to. If it's not what they thought, how much should they set aside? But they're the ones that really want to know. It really shouldn't impact us and their decision towards us. But if you remember at the end of 2021, we turned back money, and that money was set up in our reserves, 2.8 million. It replaced the 2.4 million we had used a year earlier to help with the budget ask. So that money went over, a check was written, deposited. So the reserve is set up should we need to go to it. This year, or the year that ended June of 22, we didn't turn anything back. I don't know if you're here, Teresa asked about, we hired an auditor to do the report for this year ourselves and sent that up to the state. He didn't recommend any adjusting entries that would have changed that zero. Sometimes they might find something that's in the wrong year or coded wrong. There were no changes to what we reported to you last fall. So it shouldn't impact their decision about us. But I think it's got to be on their minds for setting the tax rate. Sure.
But it looks like good practice, business practice, is the city have went ahead and completed their audit, and then, this way, whatever we needed to do as the finance director, everything would have been in place. That's what I'm only trying to say.
Well, yeah, and they're actually, they're missing two audits, the 2021 and the 21-22.
I'm sure we'll bring that up during our ad hoc committee meeting. But,
John, may I ask a quick question about
Of
that
course,
fund
yes.
balance that
Yes.
the city is holding on to for the Board of Ed? Do we have an up-to-date number as to what they are holding for us?
We don't. I have to say, Garrick is great to work with. Everything I've asked, he's given right away. I could ask for that. But I think we need to separate two things. So what really is earmarked for us are the reserves, the balance sheet reserves, and where they are. If you took the number we last handed out, I think it was just under 10 million, and you took away the 2.4 million that we used last year, and then replaced it with 2.8 million, we'd be $400,000 higher. However, when we had the problem with the high school gym, we needed an insurance deductible of $250,000. They released $250 from the reserve to pay for that. So we're right about where we've been. I could put it together if you'd like. The city surplus, on the other hand, is the last time they counted it up was about $40 million, undesignated. That's what you like to say. So, and that's for unexpected things or whatever.
It would be great if we could, John, to get a sort of like a summary of the accounting on that end with the reserve funds. So I just want to be clear, because I know we've gone back and forth over this a few times. The money that paid for the gym floor actually came out of our reserve money. Is that right? So it was not the city that paid for that. That came out of Board of Ed reserve money.
Yeah. The loss was about, I think it's a little more than 300,000. Yeah, a little more than 300,000. And Kerma, the city's insurance company, paid the amount above 250,000. That's the city deductible. So we went back and asked the city for money for the deductible. They said, well, we'll give you your reserve to use, and however you describe that. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
all right, any other questions? Any other questions? Again, I see that the bottom line in the summaries gives us what? 24,320,000 unencumbered. Is
That's just the grants.
That's just the grants?
Yep.
Okay. And
of which half, comes from that ESSER 2.
right.
And another quarter maybe comes from the other ESSER.
Okay. And from our $141 million budget, I'm seeing unencumbered of 12 million roughly,
Right.
and we say that 424,195.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the one, when I updated the reports today, the new figure is 9,905,000.
9,905,000. Okay. 9,505,505. Okay, all right. It again, some of
It's
my
mostly-
my concerns were the negative numbers, and if possible, I see the bottom line,
Mhm.
and the bottom line is that 141 million is made up of what we get from the city, and we also have expenses of that we're getting paid for out of grants. And
Yes.
I'm trying to reconcile that in my own
Well,
that that it balances.
you
And-
can add the two together. And
And I see-
that's what we
okay.
do totally.
All
I think when that report I described for the state, we told them from all sources, we spent about 185 million last year.
Okay. All right.
And
Is there anything that you need to reconcile or check on coding before tomorrow night's meeting? I'm curious about that extreme shortage in our custodial account of 900, almost 903,000. And that's just one. If it balances, it balances. I just not
Yeah,
used to seeing plus and
no,
minus numbers and all of a sudden they work out.
Yep.
But and that's my
Yeah, no,
uneducated opinion.
I can analyze it before tomorrow night. We have, sometimes we're paying 1,800 people every 2 weeks. So there's a lot of different people in different lines, and it doesn't mean we can't have it exactly right. Just there's a lot in there, but we'll have answers.
All right. That's wonderful. Any other questions? Any other concerns? Comments? Teresa, Teresa, go.
The students were complaining. I don't know if you can answer this, John, or it should be answered tomorrow. Short on AP teachers and paper towels. Do you know anything about those discrepancies?
Well,
Or
The paper towels that would go to Rich Jalbert. He has, manages the warehouse. He manages those purchases and deliveries. So I can check with him. He hasn't said anything to me about it. And the AP teachers, I don't. I haven't heard that. I could ask Dan Donovan tomorrow if you'd like.
yeah, it was at the last meeting, they were talking about the students who were demonstrating. So I asked, well, what were they asking? And they mentioned AP teachers and paper
Oh.
towels. So is there a supply chain crisis for the paper towels? I was just curious.
I haven't heard. I think what they were, more than AP teachers, they were looking for more AP course offerings. There are so many today that you can take. I took that to mean they wanted more electives.
Right,
choose from.
right. Yeah.
We can't do
teachers,
that in the middle
courses.
of the year. It's, and I think it all depends on what kids want to take and sign up for. I think that probably starting that process now if they haven't already.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, John. I appreciate all your answers. Thank you.
Oh, okay. No, that's why we have these.
All right. Any other questions? Concerns? Mr. Walston, a final comment from you, sir? If there are no other questions or concerns?
I don't see him.
I don't think he's on.
He was
Okay.
on, I
Was.
think.
He was.
Yeah, he's not on anymore. We caught him.
Busted, Kevin. All right, everyone.
Do we need to make a recommendation that this be, I guess it's just going to show up on the meeting tomorrow, right? We don't have to do any kind of recommending or
Well, yeah, I
have a committee.
I wasn't gonna go there, but does anyone like to would make a motion that we accept this report? and we will take a roll call vote if I hear a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
At this moment, I have to say nay. 2-1. Excuse me, Jesse.
Yeah, I say nay, because if the report is gonna be, we're gonna see an updated report tomorrow, correct?
Well, I was planning to look into Al's questions, but I was not planning to do the report over again.
2-2. We'll leave it up to the board. Okay. Final comments, anyone? Mr. Spang, you're the head leader here. Your final word, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. You know, if a report that's not recommended, it gives a different feel. That's all. I understand what you're
I
doing.
take no pleasure in doing this, sir. And that's why I'd like to reserve until
Yeah,
we
no, I
get
get it.
something smoother for tomorrow night. You know, and I do realize you're working shorthanded. But God, all right, I feel, let me say this. I could not in good conscience recommend if I have questions. And I'm sure it's correct. But there's a few holes and maybe some coding and if we are overspending above our means and there's a hole in there, then, just, I'm not comfortable at this moment. I never thought I would say that. If Kate didn't bring up it, I would have just let it slide and waited for your report for tomorrow.
I understand.
So
Can you repeat what the motion was?
motion was to accept the report, the financial report.
The February financial report.
Yes. And the vote, as I take it, was 2-2.
So, Mr. Russo, can I just make sure I understand that the concern here is that we might be overspending what our budget is?
Possibly,
Is
yes.
that,
Because I can't
okay.
reconcile the numbers in my own mind. I reconcile the totals. There are, there. Let me see if I can still bring it up.
And Mr. Spang I just want to point out too, that the report figure, is what we're voting on. The up-to-date figures are really for including March. Just want to point that out.
I thought it's the report in front of you. That's the action.
Right.
item.
Bottom line says
The March.
we have 12,400,000. Okay. I just can't reconcile that. And maybe I will tomorrow. So I was hoping Kevin would have, well, anyway. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 See you
Good
tomorrow.
evening, everyone.